I already made a video showing what it would be like if good champions were villains. Now let's flip it. Let's see what villains would be like if they were heroes. This video and all the champions in it were requested by Ray Shogum, an Aspect tier member. So if you want to request a video, consider subscribing. So yeah, let's start with Bel'Veth.
My prophet, your empress has arrived. Witness your reward. The end of everything.
Bel'Veth is definitely the most powerful Voidborn ever created, to the point that Vel'Koz, one of the first prototypes of the Watchers, actually trembled in fear when he was attacked by the swarm of Remora that were under the Empress of the Void's command. Right now, she's one of the biggest threats in Runeterra, expanding her Lavender Sea, and the spawn she created from it are already infecting other Voidborn, like young Xerxai. The only thing she fears are the Watchers, the patriarchs of the Void, because only they have more power than her, and they could end her and all her plans just by erasing all existence and wiping everything out. But I'm not here to talk about the Bel'Veth we have, I'm here to talk about a Bel'Veth from a parallel reality. In this version of Runeterra, the events of Bel'Veth's origin are the same. That means she started forming after years and years of incursions between the Void and the material world, contacting Malzahar while she still wasn't fully formed inside the Lavender Sea, and eventually making the Prophet open that rift by sacrificing countless people, along with that entire port city in Shurima and its marine life, so she could finally be born. But here's where things change. Even though she started off evil, something would happen during her birth. By consuming and assimilating so many mortal minds and their emotions, this time it would actually shape Bel'Veth in a different way, causing a kind of error in her Vestaya-like programming. Instead of wanting to consume by taking, she would want to preserve by maintaining. From an empress who wants to assimilate Runeterra to build another world in her image, she would instead defend it and try to exist and coexist with other species. Because of her connection to Malzahar, he would also be affected. He wouldn't open rifts anymore and might even try to find ways to close the ones that are already open, and his followers now would be preservers, all following Bel'Veth's will. Even the Lavender Sea and every Remora generated from it would now act like antibodies against the other Voidborn, and Bel'Veth, who at first formed and grew like a cancer to the entire planet, would become something like an antibiotic to the biggest threat it faces. Let's say classic Bel'Veth is like Venom, and the good Bel'Veth is more like anti-Venom. I'd even go as far to say this version of Bel'Veth would have something no other Voidborn has, an actual spirit. She could even convert Kaisa's suit, turning her into something like an anti-Voidborn too. And unlike the Whirlpool short story, the two of them would form a much more friendly alliance, working together to find a way to stop the Watchers and destroy them once and for all. The Void wouldn't be the Void anymore. It would become a new form of life, and Bel'Veth would be its matriarch.
I am so much more. I am the end of our world and the beginning of mine.
Mordekaiser. This one's actually pretty easy. If Sanuzal was a ruthless and cruel warlord, taking lands, promoting massacres, enslaving mages, and collecting a bunch of really dangerous artifacts, just try to imagine the opposite. Have you guys ever watched that Disney series, What If? In episode 7 of season 2, we see a version of Hela who ends up turning good after going through a whole discovery arc. And by the end, she becomes a liberator of realms instead of a conqueror, and her allies become her army, traveling across the cosmos to take down empires led by tyrants, like Thanos, for example. Imagining a good Sanuzal would basically be that. He wouldn't enslave or be brutal in bloody campaigns. He could still fight to free people who were imprisoned by tribes or other empires, growing his army that way, because everyone would see him as a hero or even a saint. But this version of Sanuzal would have less military power, since the one from standard Runeterra collected magic, forbidden artifacts, and even beings with massive magical power. And it didn't matter if they were malicious or if anything, that made them even better. But our good Sanuzal, by not doing any of that, would never subject his general to that ritual to fuse him with Otacon. Actually, it's pretty likely that Otacon wouldn't even go after him, since there probably wouldn't be any massacres or bloodbaths in the battles this Sanuzal would fight for freedom. As a result, LeBlanc and the other mages wouldn't be forced under Sanuzal's will to serve him, and Noxus could have a completely different different origin. Instead of the Empire being founded by tribes that united against the Iron Revenant, with everything being orchestrated by LeBlanc behind the scenes, it could be that the barbarian tribes were united by Sanuzal himself, forming a nation. It would be almost like the Avarosan tribe in Freljord. Even his resurrection would be different, since in normal Runeterra, he tricked mages and immediately killed them after being revived, turning them into his weapon, Nightfall. In this version, he would probably just die and accept death. Or maybe his own followers would revive him somehow, simply because he was such a great figure and they wanted him to keep leading them to prosperity. But most likely, he would just die normally, choosing to follow the natural cycle of life. The only question is whether he would end up in the Grey Realm, or if this good version would worship Kindred, and in the end be visited and taken by them. As for Vigar, maybe in this reality, instead of being captured and tortured, he chose to join the good Sanuzal and serve as his advisor, keeping his mind completely intact and never going through any kind of torture, physical or mental. So instead of shaping himself into this villain because of what Mordekaiser did to him, maybe he would try to become a hero.
Foolish child. Succumb. It's inevitable.
Lysandra. Another one that's not really that hard. A more good-aligned Lysandra, neither her nor her sisters, Avarosa and Serelda, would have any ambition to gain massive power or stand against the Freljordian gods. That means Lysandra would never go blind, Serelda would never lose her voice, and Avarosa would never go deaf. And the three sisters cult wouldn't exist either. In fact, they would be faithful devotees to the gods, fighting in their name. And the deal with the Watchers would never happen, so the Iceborn wouldn't exist at all. It's hard to say if the Watchers would look for someone else or somewhere else to try to emerge. If they did, there's a good chance the world and reality as we know it wouldn't even exist. Because at the end of the day, Lysandra is the one who kept the Watchers frozen in place. Even if she's the one who made that terrible bargain in the first place, sacrificing thousands of lives, setting back an entire race, the Yetis. But assuming the Void never emerged and Lysandra's life went on normally, present-day Freljord would have a lot more gods. She wouldn't have destroyed, hidden, or erased their worship, and she would have been dead for thousands of years by now, having lived a normal life with her sisters, but a happy one, even with all the hardships of living in a brutal land like Freljord.
Everyone pays! Dead men tell my tale.
Gangplank. If you want to think about someone who's truly cruel, it's Gangplank. Just to give you an idea, in Burning Tides Act 1, he's in a cabin doing one of his hobbies, carving bones. Except the victim is alive, awake, and tied down to a table with leather straps. And here's a detail. The victim was a boy, sweating like crazy, and while completely horrified, he watched his own leg get mutilated with delicate spiral wave patterns and tentacle carvings straight to the bone. The boy begged for mercy, but all he got was Gangplank pouring whiskey into the open wound, making the kid scream in pain from the burning, like some brutal ways to sterilize and clean the blood off his work. In the end, he almost completely lost consciousness, and the worst part is, we find out that this same guy was part of Gangplank's crew. Just check out that part. Remember this, boy, Gangplank said. Sometimes even those who are loyal forget their place. Sometimes it's necessary to remind them. Real power is all about how people see you. Look weak, even for a moment, and you're done. The child nodded, his face now drained of color. Wake him, said Gangplank, gesturing towards the unconscious crewman. The whole crew needs to hear his song. Man, yeah, that guy would get along perfectly with Singed. But if we flip it, if Gangplank with all the ruthless Blackbeard type reputation was actually good, he'd be more like Popeye the Sailor, maybe? One thing's for sure, he could still sail and command a ship with his own crew, but as a good guy, I see him more as a merchant, like someone transporting oranges, not as a bloodthirsty pirate. And that would massively change Miss Fortune's life, because in this version, she'd still be working at her mother's forge, side by side with her. No trauma, no trust issues, no constant struggle to keep Bilgewater under her control. There wouldn't be any revenge, because here, Gangplank isn't the murderer who destroyed a girl's life and took everything she loved. On top of that, Gangplank might even have joined the brew alongside Alawi, helping spread the word of the Great Kraken's movement, what Naga Keboros represents. And yeah, probably even being her romantic partner, with their relationship evolving, maybe even with the braids and all, just like we've seen in the main universe.
Weak of body, weak of mind. People often ask for a hero, when a villain is what they truly need.
Ambessa, LeBlanc, and Swain. These ones are so tricky that I'm just gonna group them together. And Bessa would be completely different from the rest of her family. She wouldn't fight for power or domination, maybe choosing a more peaceful life instead. And yeah, that basically kills the character and makes her kind of boring and uninteresting. Swain wouldn't be that different either, since even his parents were a part of the Black Rose, and well, he'd probably go for a peaceful life too. So he wouldn't have betrayed his parents, wouldn't have gotten promoted into the Noxian army, wouldn't have been crippled, and wouldn't have had that encounter with the Demon of Secrets. So yeah, at that point, he basically becomes a completely different character. As for LeBlanc, I think she wouldn't be sustaining her life through dark magic or whatever it is that keeps her alive and preserved. On top of that, she wouldn't be manipulative or cunning, but instead someone honest, teaching magic from more benevolent sources. And the Black Rose would actually be a group where LeBlanc teaches these kinds of magic, especially to other young mages, like an actual magic school, maybe even something closer to a church. Vigar would be your friend, and even a member of this new order. And a lot of events would be completely different or wouldn't even exist at all if LeBlanc was actually good. Honestly, this could be its own video. What if LeBlanc was good?
You work for me now! Do you know who I am?
Renata Glask.
It's Ms. Glask, if you value your life.
This one is actually evil, like really evil. So much so that in the Champion Insights about Renata, we already get a line saying if Renata Glask existed in our world, she'd be investing in crypto and manipulating the crypto market on Twitter at the same time. So you might think her parents were rich, spoiled people who raised her to be cold and ruthless, stepping on others to climb higher, manipulating, destroying enemies, taking what's theirs to gain more power and all that. But nope. Renata Glask's parents were actually alchemists who worked like doctors for a lot of people in Zon, offering treatment and cures without caring if patients could pay or not. And they were insanely talented, making real innovations in medicine. The thing is, even though they had a good reputation and wealthy clients, all the money they made went straight into researching a secret formula meant to extend lives of the sickest people. They gave up luxury for the sake of altruism and the work they believed in. But that mindset never really clicked with little Renata, who was already this super capitalist visionary kid. So what if Renata wasn't this ambitious entrepreneur?
Zeri, perhaps I might have been more like you if my parents had survived. Poor and weak.
Putting aside the fact that Zeri is basically broke according to Renata herself, I think in a good version, Renata would lean way more into altruism and sharing without expecting anything in return. Or even better, even after her parents were murdered in that arson attack on their home, which also cost Renata her arm when she tried to save them, the grief, the desire for revenge, and that ambition-driven mindset could have been stopped by the people of Zon themselves. They would take her in, share her pain, and help her move forward. Think of a scene in that moment in Arcane Season 2, where people touch Jinx as a sign of respect and hope. In Renata's case, it would be out of condolence. The same people her parents once helped would now take care of their daughter, who became an orphan. Her parents would be remembered as heroes, just like Vander in Arcane, who even had that scrap statue, a symbol of how loved he was and how much he impacted those people. And all that recognition and solidarity would deeply affect Renata, pushing her to act more like her parents. We wouldn't see her surrounded by luxury or stylish power plays. No political games where she trades favors for loyalty or control. No chemically bending others to her will using that formula her parents created. There wouldn't be luxury, but Renata would keep pushing forward with her parents' biggest goal. She'd probably even get help from other Zonite alchemists, and her empire would actually be a network of people sharing the same dream of improving healthcare for the people. She'd use her intelligence to sell ideas, to convince wealthy families to fund research, showing them that investing in her projects would actually be worth it. But honestly, this Saint Glask probably wouldn't last long, or at least very least, she'd struggle a lot to keep going, because the elite clans of Piltover would likely do the same thing as before. They'd pay agents to deal with the situation, maybe even try burning her alive, or spread a ton of fake rumors to ruin her image, making sure no one supports her or accepts her proposals. No alliances with the upper city, but at least her face would be painted on the walls, just like they did with Jinx, and the people would stand with her no matter what.
So, that's what's considered funny in the city, huh?
Kled. I don't think this one makes much sense, since he's not exactly evil, he's just crazy, unhinged, grumpy, and foul-mouthed.
It's my property! All 60 gazillion acres of it! Holy shit, where are we?
But since he was on the list Ray Shogun asked for, let's do it. Cled's brain is already completely messed up because of the mushroom juice he drinks. The wiki even mentions that he's made of mushrooms, the same kind of mushrooms that Timo uses as traps. And yeah, that stuff is pretty toxic, so it definitely causes side effects, and it left Cled's mind in this irreversible paranoid state, which combined with his short temper creates that angry hillbilly stereotype. But a good Cled would be someone who believes his home is everyone's home. He'd be extremely hospitable, not trying to rip your head off, knock your teeth out, and insult your mom every 5 seconds. He'd be kind and respectful, and he probably wouldn't even drink that mushroom juice. Maybe going for something healthier that doesn't mess with his brain. I can picture him living in a small house with his mount Scarl, who by the way is female, and inviting travelers passing by to eat something, share stories, and even help them figure out which path to take. Maybe even insisting they stay a little longer. Think about those super friendly people from rural areas. Simple and quiet, but insanely welcoming. That's basically it. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I'll see you guys in the next video.